Hey everybody, it's Jason from the Texas Gun Vault, and today I'm coming to you with another range report. And today's range report is going to be on the Beretta PX4 Storm chambered in .40 Smith & Wesson. This gun is once again on loan from my good friend Jack, who has lent me so many awesome firearms to try out. In fact, I tried out another PX4 Storm of his chambered in .45. So he said, hey, I got one in .40 and the compact version. Would you be interested? I said absolutely, and of course. Now, .40 is not my favorite cartridge when it comes to the big three, the 9, 45, and 40. I've always felt it's a little bit snappy, but when I do, I like it in full-size guns. This is going to be a compact, so I'm kind of anxious to see how this one shoots. So let's put some rounds down range and see what I think. All right, so overall, I'm pretty happy with this group. The gun does shoot a little bit low. So my first shot, I know for a fact, was down here. And then once I got the sights on target, I have a pretty good group. I'm pretty happy with that. I'll just have to compensate for the sights. So let me put some more rounds through this gun. I'm using today Freedom munitions and Federal 180 grain full metal jacket. So that was the Freedom munitions. I'm gonna load up some of this Federal, see if I do any better. All right, so I got a few more magazines loaded up here with some Federal 180 grain. This time I'm gonna go for the head. I wanna say too, the trigger on this is a little bit weird for me. The reset is very loud and audible. I do like it. It does have a nice clean break, but after you get past the reset, there's a lot of take up to get back to the wall. That's something that I would have to get used to. Now I know this is a double action, single action trigger. I don't really care too much when it comes to the double actions because I'm always going to use that as the safety. I would always carry this with the hammer down. But when it comes to the single action pull, I like it to be crisp, light, and easy. This one has a little bit too much take up for me, but let's see if I can compensate for the sights and adjust for that trigger. All right, so my grouping is a little bit better, and something that I am discovering is the reason I think I'm shooting it low is I'm hearing the reset, and the way that I like to shoot, I refer to it as riding the reset. I don't like that pull and have so much take up after the reset. And I think with this gun, having to pull the trigger back so far to find the wall, I'm pulling the gun down just a little bit. So that's something I just had to compensate for, kind of figure out. And now I feel like I'm shooting the gun a lot better and the point of aim is right on. So I'm glad that I figured that out. As for recoil, it's not as snappy as I was expecting. Normally, as I said, I don't like 40, but these PX4 Storms use the rotating barrel. It's a very unique design and one of the reasons I'm so fascinated by these guns. I know I definitely want a full size in 9mm eventually, just to kind of complete the Beretta collection, but I'm really impressed with how this thing manages the 40. All right, so I'm gonna load up another magazine, have my wife shoot it, and see what she thinks. All right, so for my last 15 rounds here, I've set the target at 12 yards. I'm going to see what my accuracy is at a little bit larger distance and tell you about what my wife thought of it. She did not like it. She thought it was a little bit too snappy, and her main complaint is when she pulled the double action trigger on that first round. It's actually a long distance. She has a little bit shorter fingers and she couldn't reach the trigger comfortably. So that was kind of her main complaint besides the recoil. Personally, for someone like myself with a little bit larger hands, I feel like it fits in my hands pretty good and the reach isn't too bad. So maybe if you have smaller hands, you might want to look elsewhere, but if you have larger hands, this gun is going to be just fine. All right, so this is going to be my last 15 rounds here, target set at 12 yards. Let's see how I do. So this was an okay grouping. It always takes me about 2 or 3 shots to kind of figure out where the gun wants to shoot. I don't have good muscle memory with it, but at 12 yards, these are my last few shots here, and those were the first. It just always takes me a couple minutes to kind of figure that out. Overall, I like the gun. I think it shoots really well, and especially if you like the 40 caliber. I also noticed when I was standing behind the camera filming my wife that this thing has a really strong ejection. It's very consistent. This thing shoots the brass halfway across the room. I think some of them even hit the camera, so maybe you guys saw that. I'll have to check that when I get it back home and edit the video. So I do like that. This thing just shoots the brass, it gets it out of the way, and I think that's going to add a little bit of reliability to the gun. All right, so let's get this thing home. I'm going to clean it up and give you guys my final thoughts. All right, so we got this thing back from the range. I've had some time to clean it and formulate my thoughts. And I gotta say that I really liked how this thing performed at the range. And as I mentioned, I'm not usually a huge fan of the 40 caliber. It's just a little bit too snappy, and when I do prefer it in larger framed guns just because it can mitigate the recoil. Some of you guys probably think I'm recoil sensitive. I'm really not. I can shoot 40 fine. It's just that I can shoot other calibers a little bit better and get them back on target. But for a compact gun in 40, this does a pretty darn good job. I think that the gun is pretty beefy for what it is, and it reminds me a lot of the HK USP series, which was designed around the 40 caliber. So it doesn't wear out as fast as, let's say, a Glock 23 or a Glock 22, which was a 9mm that was kind of chambered up for 40, and they have wear issues in the thousands and thousands of rounds. I don't know if this one's going to have that. It also could be the really neat rotating barrel system in this that helps mitigate the recoil. I don't know. And of course, I've mentioned in the past with the other PX4 Storm reviews that I've done, I really find this type of rotating barrel system fascinating. It's mechanically fascinating. However, this one handles it in a little bit different way and I think has a flaw. But before I take the gun apart and kind of show you a couple of things internally I'm not a huge fan of, it did not affect the gun in any functional way at the range, but there are a few gripes that I have. But let's talk about externally when it comes to actually firing the gun, something that I neglected to mention at the range. And that's when you fire the gun in double action and the trigger is all the way forward. This trigger has to travel a long way back to pull the hammer. And the problem with that is, if you have big old fat fingers like I do, when the gun is in double action, you don't have a lot of room in the trigger guard to get your finger up here. Now I know what you're saying, you got your finger in there just fine, but actually from the side, I really don't. It's kind of rubbing on the front of the trigger guard. And then if I do get my finger in here, this really rounded trigger kind of pokes into my finger at the bottom. I feel like either the trigger guard needs to be extended just a little bit or this trigger needs to be worked on, either have it be a little bit more flat, which I don't like perfectly flat triggers, but I do like a little bit of curve, or have it done in a different way where it doesn't have to be so far forward. I found that to be a little bit uncomfortable and my wife even had an issue with it, not the same issue of having fat fingers, but she has smaller hands and she actually had a hard time reaching the front of the trigger when she was shooting it double action. So that's a little bit of a gripe that I have when it comes to the way that this thing shoots. Another thing externally that I don't like is not all of the controls are sturdy when it comes to the right hand side. Now when it comes to the safety, it works just fine and it's nice and solid. But like a very similar gripe I have to some of my HKs, when it comes to the slide stop, it's not sturdy. So without even me moving the slide, you can actually see that this slide stop on this side has a lot of play in it. It just feels chintzy. I have a few other guns that are very similar to that. I think most of them are HKs, and I kind of wish that was a little bit tighter. Not that that's going to cause any issues, but for me, especially if you were going to shoot this left-handed, that kind of bothered me. If the slide locks back, it just has a lot of play in it. I don't like that. I want it to feel more solid. Is that a deal breaker or something I would deduct points for? Not really, but for a serious gun guy like myself that really gets into the mechanics, it bothers me just a little bit. All right, so let's talk about the two things internally about the gun that I don't like. And I only discovered this after getting it home from the range. So let me field strip this right here. All right, so the first issue I have is the locking block. Now, I don't remember how the locking block worked in the PX4 Storm 45. I want to say the locking block mechanism was actually built into the frame, which I prefer. So the way that it would be milled out is the groove where the barrel would twist would be in a metal piece inside of the frame. Here, it is external and below the recoil spring. So it comes out just like that, and of course I dropped the recoil spring, but you can see it has this weird plastic shield here in the front. Now I am not a fan of plastic parts like this, especially ones that move, because plastic is going to wear out. Now the back part is metal, and that is where you have the lug for the rotating barrel. But this seems to indicate to me that maybe over time and especially heat, this is going to break. So I don't know if this is a part that is easily bought, or if in the future, if they discontinue this model, this is something you would be able to get many of, because I have a tendency to think this is going to break over time. It has a couple of little metal parts that are molded into it to the side, but the majority of this is plastic. I think this should be all metal if they were going to use the locking block system like this. Another thing that I did notice, and this may not come across on camera and I may have to put in some photos individually, and I'll do that right now if I need to, but when it comes to the feed ramp on this gun, and let me see if I can get this in focus. I might be able to. There it goes. Okay, so the feed ramp of this is mainly metal, which is what you would want, so there's like a metal insert, but the very top of this feed ramp that would feed into that barrel is polymer, and it looks like it's being chewed away a little bit. I think that this feed ramp needs to be 100% metal. The fact that the polymer is already kind of being divoted away or worn away is a problem. Now, maybe that's just a little bit of polymer and right underneath it is the metal, and as the polymer goes away, it exposes that metal and it still works fine. The reason that you can't have the feed ramp on the barrel is that the barrel rotates itself. So the feed ramp would rotate with it, and that just would not work like it typically would on like a 1911 Browning High Power or Glock. So the feed ramp here is built into the frame, and it is metal fortified, but it's not completely metal. And this one just shows a little bit of wear. That would personally concern me. I don't know if that would be an issue over time, but as I said, it's just one of those things that I noticed, and my mind, being the mechanically inclined one that it is, just thinks long-term use and thinks, man, with heat, wear, that's something that I would want to make sure was not going to be a problem in my gun. All right, so let's put this thing back together. I do have to say the field strip of this gun is relatively easy. You can really get into all of the small parts of this to clean it, which I really like because I am so OCD when it comes to my firearms. So this is actually a really easy gun to clean and to work on. I really do like that. So there's my gripes. So let me talk about a couple things I really do like about this, and of course that's going to be the aesthetics and the mechanics of it. I thought the gun shot exceptionally well for me. I really like the recoil impulse for 40 in a compact, so if this is a caliber I really love to shoot and carry. This is a gun I would definitely take a look at. I do like the fact that it is hammer fired. Safety works just like a Beretta 92. I'm not sure if they have a G model, which would be decocker only, but you have the safety and decocker built into one, and it's on the slide, which I personally don't mind. And this one does have a little bit of an upward slant, so you don't have to worry about, like you do on the 92, of when you cock the slide, of accidentally engaging the safety. So overall, I really like this gun. I really think Jack did really nice on it and has a fine taste in firearms. So overall, on my little star system, how would I rate this gun? Well, I took some time and thought about this. It's a gun that I'm interested in. I think I would prefer the full size and a 9mm. And I think it's well built, and of course I love Beretta, but I do have a couple things like I mentioned, the trigger reach and those couple of parts, which do concern me, but did not affect the function at the range, so I'm not gonna deduct points for that. I think overall this gun gets 3.5 stars out of 5. And I know some of you guys that absolutely love the 40 caliber or love the PX4 Storm are now thumbs downing my video and hating me, and that's okay. As I said, I still want one of these, flat dark earth, 9mm, full size. So Beretta, if you're watching and want me to review one, you can always send one to the channel, wink, wink. But anyway, that's what I'm interested in. But this one's pretty good too. But so far I haven't given the PX4 Storms that high of ratings in general. But it's a gun I really, really want to give a 5-star review for. But I do have my issues, as I said, the trigger, the slide stop, the internal stuff. But overall, it is a super high quality gun, and I would have no reservations at all recommending this gun to anybody, friends, family, fellow gun enthusiasts. If this is a gun you like, I think you cannot go wrong. And this size and caliber might not be the one for me, but it might be for you. But as I said, another high quality gun from Beretta. You really can't go wrong with Beretta at all. So there you go. My range reports and thoughts and opinions on the Beretta PX4 Storm 40 Compact. So thank you, Jack, for letting me borrow it. And I really do appreciate it more than you will ever know. So there you go. So let me know in the comment section below, do you guys own a gun similar to this? What do you think of my comments on the 40 caliber in the rotating barrel action? So as always, thanks for watching.